So how has the Folkwire changed my life? Well, in some ways it hasn't changed my life at all because I've been here for 35 years. But in other ways it's transformed my life. It's transformed my musical life and my spiritual life. When I first arrived on this campus, that group didn't exist, and the repertoire didn't exist. We had maybe an amount of music that could fit into a single suitcase, and that was for maybe 8 singers. Now we're in a situation where we have 65 people, but apart from even the numbers, which is, I suppose, a way to chronicle things, there's something else, and that is a very ineffable thing, a hard thing to put your finger on. And I believe that when things get ineffable, you're actually walking on holy ground, because then you're really touching into transcendent places, and it's really hard to put things like that into words. So a rehearsal that we just got out of, and there was a young student there, a high school senior that's trying to get into Notre Dame, and has his eyes sort of opened wide as to what prayer and music and joy can be like. And those are all things that's hard to describe, and yet they leave lasting impressions. That's the same for me, to see that transformative process happen week after week, and to be a part of that for so long, to see the growth of it from this tiny little seedling with hardly any understanding of who it is, to now a group that has a reputation pretty much across the English-speaking world. And that's a real humbling thing to see. And it means that for those of us that have been given much, a whole lot is expected. The goal for the Folkwire is a very prophetic goal, and it's a very difficult goal in this society, and that is to be joyful. Understanding joy is understanding, I think, how to live a life spiritually. And that is with a tremendous amount of depth and vulnerability, embracing sorrow, because they're both part of the same thing. And to be able to walk through that in a way that's filled with faith. That is a really countercultural thing. I believe that one of the most important things that the Folkwire can do is bring joy, announce joy, live by joy, and be able to witness to that in a way that's unabashedly filled with goodwill. One trend is something that is simply mentioned in Scripture over and over again, and that trend is you don't take a lamp and put it out in a bushel basket. So if this ensemble is doing great work, then it's up to this university to take that great work and steward it well. And stewarding it well means not shoving it under a bushel basket. So a trend that I would think in terms of stewardship would be to make sure that it's held high. And not in a vain way, but in a stewardship way, to see that we could affect a healthy kind of spirituality among young people, and offer both a repertoire and a pedagogy for good choral singing that isn't just based on music, but also based on spiritual formation. I also think that our work both outside the university by way of our commitment to America and overseas is going to grow. We've never done 2 international years of touring, and that's happening for the first time in the history of the choir. Our 35-year anniversary will be next year, and that's going to be an exciting reunion too for people. So there are some things that are coming up that you can say, well, this looks like this is going to be a lot of fun. But you also, as with anything ministerial, you're being an entrepreneur in some ways, a spiritual entrepreneur, and you're rolling the dice and you don't quite know what's going to happen with it, which is exciting. All right, a question about my songwriting process is an invitation to visit dementias. I'll be honest with you and say the first thing that happens for me is that I fall in love with a text. And then I let the text kind of swim around in my head for a long time. I walk around town, I walk around the lakes, I walk around my neighborhood, and I just simply think about the text. And then I might get one measure of music. It just kind of comes to me. Write it down, don't forget it. And from that measure of music, everything else comes. Music is there to illustrate the word and not vice versa. So I think that one reaction that has been made in years past to our music is that it really highlights texts really well. And I think that's a great compliment to writing, because first and foremost should be the word. So my first reaction to the Folkwire going to Australia was one of fear, because I knew that we were going to Ireland and Scotland in 2016, and logistically I just thought to myself, how are we going to do this? But I've also had a very strong disposition whenever I've worked on, in my years of ministry, of not worrying about money. If it's meant to happen, it's going to happen, and we'll find a way for it to happen. The most important thing is it a good idea? This was a really good idea. It wasn't my idea, it wasn't Karen's idea, it was the idea of a university on the other side of the planet who came to see us and said, we are interested in collaborating and learning some of your repertoire, and we're interested in you learning some of ours and creating a dialogue between our two universities. And I look at that and it's like, that's how the church gets built up. One community interacting with another community. That's how Paul started the church in his evangelization in the first century. So I looked at that, it was like, we will never have another opportunity like this again, to be under the protective wing and sponsorship of such a major Catholic institution, continental in scope. What do we hope to accomplish in Australia? If I'm true to the mission, then we're going to be announcing joy. It has been said to me already by some of the clergymen and lay people that work in Australia that it is a very secularized country. And if that's the case, then the work and the witness and the repertoire of this ensemble is going to be put in a prophetic stance, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing. I think Australia will be changed, at least the faith communities that we encounter will be changed a little bit. I think we'll spread a lot of seeds, and by that I mean new repertoire, and I think it will catch on, as it has in Scotland and in Ireland. And I think we'll learn some things ourselves while we're over there that we'll bring back. Our choir, if we're doing things the way we should, our choir will come back from Australia a changed ensemble. The atmosphere in the folk choir has transformed. I think the seeds were there in 1980 for where the group is now, but it was definitely in a neonatal stage back then. And now it's kind of in full flower. It was a much slipperier slope back then to try to create a community of strong faith witness when they were so few, when the numbers were so few, and they were so little known at the time. But little by little, the community, the musical community, and the repertoire and the activities of the ensemble kept growing. And so I think there's been a profound change in both activity, in focus, in strength of witness, across the board since its inception in 1980. I have no doubt about that, because I've seen how clearly focused this ensemble gets year after year after year. Fondest memories. Gosh, there have been so many. Maybe a handful, quick ones. Being on a platform at 3:30 in the morning in Denver, Colorado in 1993 with another 60 members of the folk choir, watching the sun come up over 500,000 people, and being as close from here to you to John Paul II when the folk choir sang for World Youth Day in '93. That was pretty amazing. The kind of thing that doesn't happen often. Profound moments in Ireland. There have just been many profound moments of both weariness and joy, and trying to bring music back to that country, which is still so desperate, really desperate for, and spiritually hungry. And I'm convinced that our witness there is needed now more than ever in that church. I've got many memories of that in Ireland. Some really beautiful memories of things that happened here at Notre Dame with world leaders. Desmond Tutu waltzing down the aisle, that amazing Episcopal leader in South Africa, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, literally dancing in to McKenna Hall as the Folkwire sang Sia Humba. And to watch a clergyman dance was just amazing. Beautiful, beautiful moment. Cardinal Cahill Daly, who also won a Nobel Peace Prize, did the St. Patrick's Day liturgy years ago before he died. And we were singing Rian Falrig at the end, and it was like he was a sponge, and he was soaking up all the music, and he was holding on to his shepherd's staff, and the acolytes were starting to move, like, we're getting out of here. And he just put his hand out to say, nobody's going anywhere until I hear this whole song. And he had his eyes were looking up toward the ceiling. His face was beatific. He was just soaking in the joy of the song. Radiant, just a radiant man. Frère Roger, who was the founder of Taizé, also received a Notre Dame award a few years ago, and the folk choir sang for that ceremony in the Basilica. Watching Frère Roger moving through the congregation, you'd swear you saw that he was surrounded by this aura of candlelight, and people were just reaching out to touch him. So there have been incredible moments like that over the years where people that have come to Notre Dame, those are kind of the mountaintop moments. Put all that aside, and all the little moments that make up this choir. People leaving at the end of their senior year, freshmen coming in, wide-eyed, wondering what it's all about. Watching the looks on the faces of the Sunday night Easter Mass at 9 o'clock when all those students unleash on the Mass parts and you realize that they're all in it for the right reasons. Those are all amazingly profound moments. I don't know how you choose between them.
Let us